This podcast is brought to you by New Life Ministries.
Welcome to the Every Man's Battle podcast. I'm your host, JJ West. On this podcast, you will hear honest conversation and encouragement for living a life of sexual integrity. Let's get to today's episode. Hey, welcome back to the Every Man's Battle podcast. We are so glad that you are joining us. My name is JJ West. I am the host of the podcast. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work with individuals, couples, working through the recovery process, dealing with sexual addiction, as well as families. I get to present at the Every Man's Battle Intensive, as well as the Intimacy and Marriage Workshop. And I'm joined by
Doug Barnes. Great to be here, JJ. Thank you for having me.
Glad you're here. Yeah.
I am a licensed professional counselor in Dallas, Texas, and my practice too is just men struggling with sexual integrity. I work with couples on the redemptive process through betrayal trauma, and I've had the privilege of working with Every Man's Battle for many years now, facilitating groups. I've led a few workshops and a few intensives here and there, but I'm just thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I'm always thrilled to be in studio with you, Doug. And today I'm even more thrilled because we are joined by Laura Mangin-McDonald. Yay!
Yay! So glad to be here.
Laura is a licensed professional counselor, also in Texas.
Yes.
And most of the audience may be aware that Laura is the presenter at the Restore Workshop, co-presenter at the Intimacy and Marriage Workshop, has been on the New Life Live radio program multiple times, and works in this field of helping couples walk through the recovery and restoration process.
Yes.
She knows her stuff, guys. So we get to learn from her. We get to be inspired by her. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you.
Laura is a longtime friend of the podcast, and she's going to share lots of really great things with us today, because the topic of the day is, what should she do if he is not doing good recovery work? Now, she could be a wife, she could be a girlfriend, she could be a fiance. So we want to be,
maybe a parent.
Or even a parent, but most of what we'll talk about today is probably going to be more in that romantic partner dynamic. But what should she do if he's not doing good recovery work? Now, that in and of itself, that phrase needs to probably be spelled out, and we never want to leave you hanging. So go back to episodes 4 and 5 of season 2, and we did a whole discussion on what does good recovery work look like. How do you measure good recovery work? So parts 1 and 2 of how to measure good recovery work, that'll give you an idea of what we're talking about in terms of the work that he should be doing. But today we're gonna turn our discussion to, what should she do if he's not? If he's not doing good recovery work, he refuses to, he doesn't know how, whatever is getting in the way of him not doing that work, what should be her response? So, Laura, glad that you're here.
Gosh.
How can the betrayed partner, the spouse, the fiance, the girlfriend, how can she find and maintain that balance between maybe compassion and empathy for him, who is not doing good work for whatever reason, and still maintaining those healthy boundaries for herself? What should that look like?
Well, it feels like walking a tight wire across the Empire State Building. I mean, it is, she longs to have her marriage restored. She longs to feel restored to her husband, but yet the writing is on the wall. And one of the difficult parts of when women come to Restore is walking them through going, he's not doing his work. Believe me, we want him to. In fact, in my office, I have a big magnifying glass. And I said, when a guy's doing his work, I don't have to pull out my magnifying glass and go, hold on, there's evidence, right?
Right.
I think I see it. Because we desire to see it, right?
Yeah.
But, oh, gosh, because what she's teetering with, if I don't find it, it's confirming what I believe. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. It's horrible. right? It's horrible. Okay. So what she cannot do is try to manage his treatment, manage his recovery.
Yeah.
And now she can say, in healthy boundaries, I need for you to go to so many meetings. I need for you to check in to sponsor. I want us to go to individual and marital therapy. I need to, anytime I ask for your phone, right? And I've had some people tell, some therapists, so make sure you have a trauma therapist, tell the person to, don't be looking, you don't need to be seeing that. Well, guess what? Her nervous system is in a high alert. That would be like having blink cameras everywhere. And I was just robbed last month. I was just broken into. But yet, don't look at those blink cameras.
Yeah, you don't need to check that.
Look, that just happened then. Don't let your imagination run. Well, my imagination is running because it's working right, trying to protect me, right? So to look at his phone, all passwords. You need to know the finances. I'm amazed at women who have no idea how to get to, the different accounts or whatever. So those are some of the things. What did you ask me?
Well,
I got a little hyper vigilant there.
Sometimes it can feel like I'm either going to be compassionate, empathetic, and understanding of how stuck, the reasons why he might be stuck, or I'm going to have healthy boundaries for myself in terms of what I'm willing to and not willing to endure, put up with, whatever. Right. And is there a way to do both? There
is. There has to be, because a guy who shows up willing is just not there yet. So you're going to have to be able to balance that. So it's one, the woman needs to be in her own treatment. She needs to have a support group. I can't tell you how many times a history, whether they call in on the radio, one of the first questions, well, who is around you? Who's, I go to church. That's great. But who knows everything that's going on right now? Well, and their reservation is, I don't want to oust him. I don't want to, No, you've got to have someone who's walking with you in your pain, right? So she's got to have that. That's crucial, and hopefully a good trauma therapist. And I don't want to beat that in the ground, but a good trauma therapist can recreate that where those injured attachments are, and be the safe place to practice putting all the pieces back together again, right? Along with her support group. We have support groups at Restore after that, right? Okay, so say she has this going on, and then this incredible desire to put things back together with her husband. That's where she can teeter in wanting to manage his recovery instead of collaborating or having requirements, which she needs to feel safe, right? And where women get stuck, and I see this, and it is, sometimes I just burst into tears in my office with them when they finally do say, okay, I need this. And he goes, see ya. I'm out of here. Because they don't want to push. If they know if they set really healthy boundaries, that they're going to find out, because that's what healthy boundaries do. They say, I'm not interested. No, you're not enough.
Yeah. Oh, that's heartbreaking.
So balancing that, so she needs the help with her people, her therapist, practicing. And a lot of times this is the first time many women go, what is it I need? I've been taking care of the house, my profession, my kids.
Right.
I can't tell you the last time I ever thought about what do I want.
Don't even know what I need.
Right.
I don't even know.
Yeah. Right. Just in daily living, what is it that I need? But then now we add to it, what do I need to
What's
heal?
in my heart?
What do I need to recover? Right.
Yeah. Right.
And you raised the point about, it's easy to get focused on managing his recovery. And I don't know if this is true, but I have a suspicion that sometimes betrayed partner, spouse, fiance, girlfriend believes that somehow my healing is tied to his healing.
Right.
And so I've got to manage his healing. I've got to manage his recovery in order for me to be healed, for me to be whole, for me to experience peace. And I would argue that that's not true.
It's not.
Okay.
Even though it feels that way,
It
right?
feels
when
that
your
way.
life's been blown up,
Yeah.
and it's a we, and we are going to do life together in our family. When our story's been, blown up with a shotgun,
Yeah.
and just pieces floating through the air, it's hard not to believe. Oh, how am I ever going to get better?
Yeah.
I often share a story at Restore and Intimacy and Marriage of back when I used to play co-ed softball, right? And, if y'all know, when you play, I grew up playing third, but when you play co-ed, women play second because guys want to line drive it down third, right? Well, I took a line drive. I will say, because the sun was in my eyes. But that's something.
That was always my reason why.
Right. I just want to clarify that for anybody out there. But, it cracked my skull, broke my orbital bone, crushed my jaw, broke my jaw, all that. Horrible, horrible. And we didn't have insurance at the time. Lord provided. But I used this illustration to say, I didn't cause that injury.
No.
That injury was put upon me.
Yeah.
A wrong was done to me. I didn't do wrong. However, it was my responsibility to participate in my healing. And in this case, the guy never even said he was sorry.
Yeah.
Right? Never. I mean, so injured me, but am I going to want to argue or going, it's your responsibility. You've got to. I can't heal unless you heal. Well, that would seem crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I had to take we have to take. It doesn't seem right. But here's the it's God's freedom, His promise. Our wellness does not hinge on another person's decision.
That's right.
We're independent. We can walk in freedom.
Yeah.
Pray, I'm gonna start raising my hands here, but thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't depend.
And at the same time, we know this from Scripture. We know it from Genesis 50. We know it from Romans 8:28, that God works all things for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purposes. Joseph says at the end of Genesis, to his brothers who, threw him in a well, sold him into slavery because of their jealousy.
The bloody rags,
Yeah. And then told Dad that he's, probably dead because some animal must have mauled him, right? Says to them, you intended it for evil, but God intended it for good, for the saving of many lives, right? So God takes even these injuries that are done to us that are not our fault.
Not their fault. That's the hardest thing to convey.
Yeah, but can take that wound, take that injury, and turn it into something we never imagined was possible.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
I can tell you at the end of Restore, I usually will just kind of have this rising up moment because I will start out and say, I'm sorry you're here. I'm sorry I'm here.
Yeah.
None of us ever wanted this to be part of our story, but God doesn't waste pain.
That's right.
And if the Lord were to ask me to do it again, I'm going, oh no, thank you, pass. Right. But what I do know on the backside of my personal pain, and this is something I can offer women, no devil in hell. I know my value. I know my who is what matters, not my do. I know I am a child of God. I know that I matter. I matter. Because when betrayal trauma happens, betrayal trauma breaks down the molecular structure of our cells.
Yeah.
It blows us up. And we do not feel that we matter. So going through it, and I will not say, "Oh, God, is going to use that," or it was not meant to be. That's called sinful
plan.
nature.
Yeah, agreed.
A fallen world. It was not meant to be.
Yeah,
but we can grow strong from that.
The Restore Intensive is designed for a woman dealing with a man's sexual addiction issues.
Restore gave me strength. I met up with a group of women that are going through things that they had no control over.
If you've been affected by betrayal, an emotional or physical affair, or pornography, the Restore Intensive will equip you with support and tools to help you through, and it's coming to a city near you. To register to find out more, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE or online at newlife.com.
You know, so many wives that I've come in contact with they're afraid because, like you said, this was not how my life was supposed to be. Mm-mm. So what if he chooses that over me? And I'm lost. I've got these 3 kids. I've got a mortgage. He goes and finds some other bimbo, as the term goes,
or other words,
or whatever. But I see a fear of becoming that awareness of that childness, that child of God. My identity is through Christ, not through you sharing my last name.
Right.
And so to go through that empowerment, not the right word,
but it is
encouragement.
It's an encouragement that morphs into empowerment, because that's where you learn that no devil in hell is going to, no, I am capable. God has made me capable. I have people, the incarnational, power of Jesus Christ coming through the group, right? In Galatians, they gird up and carry you and up underneath you. But it's in that that pain's not wasted.
Right.
Maybe I'm getting a little bit too excited again.
No. This is awesome. But at the same time, I hear, yes, and if I go into my good recovery and he doesn't, then I'm going to be alone, or I'm going to be, excommunicated from the church, or I'm going to be kicked out of my life group, or and so I think there are some spouses who look at the suffering they're going to endure if they don't rise up and say, this is what I need, this is what I need you to do, and this is how I need you to come and speak with me, talk with me, interact with me, communicate with me.
Right, and which, that fear is legit, because that's what makes betrayal trauma so horrible. It blows up the life that was defined, right? However, what also happens in that is when we participate in being a silent accomplice, not deliberately. I'm not trying to pathologize the female here in any way, but if I somehow agree to not call this out, or to stay here, or to say I somehow had part of it, what happens is I perpetuate an incoherent narrative, right? And for us to heal, we're Ephesians, I think it's 4:15. We speak in truth. We have to speak in truth. Who am I? And that, sometimes this is being challenged for the first time. Maybe they left the home, went off to school, married, and all that's great, but they've never, who are you? Who are you outside of the wife? Who are you outside of being a mother? Who are you? And that's what we really get into at Restore is going down deep in that core. Did that?
Yeah. Well, it also, I think, helps point to not only who are you, but what do you trust in?
Oh, yeah.
Because there is a brokenness, and I'm treading very carefully here.
No, I know you.
But there is a brokenness to trusting in my family or my marriage to give me joy and purpose and meaning.
Right. Well, they were trained up that way.
In the same way that there is sin and brokenness in me trusting in my job to give me joy and purpose and
money,
meaning.
my bank account,
all the things, right?
Yes.
So I think that there are times where, again, God doesn't cause it, He didn't intend it, but He will use it to help you to recognize, no, my purpose, my identity, my meaning and my joy come from my relationship with Him.
Right.
And something as painful as betrayal, it's as though my roots were clinging to a false god, and the betrayal helped to pull the roots out.
It blew up the platform, the foundation, right? We just don't know what we don't know. I can tell you, when I went through betrayal trauma, I would have argued with the world that my husband would have ever betrayed me.
Sure.
I mean, gosh, if anybody knows him, what a nice guy. But once that and let me clarify here, emotional affair and physical affair weigh in the same. Just put that in your side pocket.
Just you.
Right? Just put that in your side pocket. Just so you know, because, and don't ever put just an emotional affair.
Yeah.
Just put that in your side pocket later time. But I didn't know what I didn't know. I had done a zillion hours of trauma work already on myself, my growing up years. And I thought, well, I wasn't like on Christian cruise control, but I thought, I have things pretty taken care of until. But trauma blows up the bedrock of your being, and it uncovers things you didn't even know were there.
Yeah.
Right? But that's the Genesis 50:20. The Lord will not waste that pain.
That's right.
He will, and it is undeniable. But, still, when someone, so we don't just give the encouragement, rah speech here to someone who's coming in bleeding in triage.
Oh, yeah.
But it is a promise, because it's not my promise, it's God's promise.
That's right. Okay, so here's what we've done. We have tackled the tip of the iceberg. Well, I think. I've loved the conversation so far. But we have another whole section of the iceberg under the water that we want to tackle.
Yes.
And we want to do it well.
Yes.
So here's my suggestion is that we're going to take a break.
Okay.
We're going to close out this episode, but we're going to continue the conversation in next week's episode.
Let's do that.
I think we need to do that.
Right. So much.
Because there's so much that we need to cover to do it well.
Yes.
And this is, we're really actually trying to model what it looks like to care for your own heart when you have been betrayed. You have to give space. You have to give time. You can't rush through it. You can't, okay, I'm going to take the next 3 weeks and heal.
Right. We don't pray it away. Prayer is powerful. We don't pray it away.
Yeah. We need to give ourselves the time and the space to do so. And so in that spirit, we want to give ourselves the time and the space to have a healthy conversation around what that looks like.
Yes.
I love the fact that, we've highlighted your healing is not dependent on His work. Your healing is independent in your relationship with God.
Right.
And yes, there's some challenges, there's some fears, there's some there's some real consequences, if you will, if you continue to move forward in your healing. That we want to be honest about, but there's also consequences if you choose not to move forward in your healing because He's still stuck.
Yes.
Right. And that's a much more painful road to be on.
But we see that in our offices, right? Couples coming in after having done a little bit of work or him getting moving the needle a little bit. And so that gives her hope. And then they get stuck there.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it turns from hope to hopeless over time. The longer it drags out with him not doing the work, I've seen a lot of hopelessness, and coming back from that is so hard.
Well, it's much like, I always go back to a medical injury, right? If I broke my leg and I am not following, the doctor's orders, I think, I'm strong enough to do this, or I don't need that. Well, the injury in recovery actually puts me further back than the original injury.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's just like, and if we have two people who are willing to do the trauma work with the Lord as the head, they can heal.
Right.
And they can walk in the freedom like they never imagined. But I always say it's the hardest work they'll ever do with the greatest return they ever get.
Yeah, totally. No doubt. If you heard this episode and maybe you're a guy in recovery, and maybe you're doing work, and so you think, well, this isn't really the episode for me because I'm doing work, but maybe you know someone who needs to hear this episode. Maybe you know someone who is waiting on their spouse to do the work that needs to be done, and they've either paused or never even begun their own healing. Would you pass this episode on to them so that maybe they can start, and hopefully they'll also listen to part 2, but pass on to them this information so that they can start to get that encouragement to do the work that they need. There may also be an opportunity for them to take advantage of the discount for Restore.
Oh, that'd be great.
They might need to go to Restore, and if they have a husband who has been to Every Man's Battle, they get a discount on their registration fee. So we would encourage you to do that as well. Call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. to find out more about that discount. But also call 1-800-NEW-LIFE or go to the website to find out more about the Restore Workshop, find out about all the other workshops that we do, because we know that good things happen at those workshops. We know that God uses those workshops to either start the healing process for many or take it to that next level, right? Kind of fast forward, if you will. Not that's the wrong phrase, but
Right.
it's like, oh, we're getting like 6 months of therapy done in a weekend.
For sure.
There's
For
an
sure.
intensity to it. That's why we call them the intensives, right?
Intensive, yeah.
Okay. So thank you for listening. Once again, if you have questions or comments about what you're hearing, maybe you have a topic that you would like us to cover in an upcoming episode, would you shoot us an email to embpodcast@newlife.com? We would love to answer those questions, or we'd love to hear the feedback, because, again, we kind of sit in a room and talk into microphones, and we're not really sure how all of that is being heard on the other side. So we would love to get feedback from you, hear any suggestions that you might have, as well as try and answer any questions that you might have. Doug, Laura, thank you guys.
Thank you guys. I love hanging out with y'all.
Really, really good stuff. Okay, join us next week as we continue our conversation on what should she do if he is not doing good recovery work. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. This podcast is just one of the many ways we can encourage and help you. If you're looking for more help, visit us at newlife.com or call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Please remember to review, like, and share the podcast, as it helps others find us. If you have a comment about this podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line at embpodcast@newlife.com. See you next week.